All right, good morning, guys. Ken at Torres Capital. This is coaching for March 1st, 2026. Get my glasses working here. Praying for peace, doing our best. Hope you guys are safe. Let's
Everything
see.
safe down here.
Alex, how are we doing this morning?
Doing well. Good morning. I don't have much of a progress, but I started to review my newsletter sources for the
Yeah,
stocks. Is the way that you suggested.
yeah,
Uh, between the guys that are value guys and between the story guys. And looking at the story guys, majority of the stories, don't pan out, at least in their
yeah,
in a short term. And so I'm, definitely putting other, um, entry criteria for the stocks that they pitch. I use them as a filters,
yeah.
but not as an entry.
Yep, there's always a reason to be interested in them. It just may not be the day today to have them. So, yeah, good. Luis, just a quick check-in.
Hey, good morning, guys. Here, just everything normal down here in Austin. There was a little shooting down here downtown. Um, and with the news about what's happening in Iran, my quick suggestion for the week, which you'll hear during my presentation, is that I dove deeply into the LLM to help me do the coach's eye and do a review of my last
Yeah,
4 weeks. And I'll share with you step by step for where and where is guiding me. I did want to touch with you, Ken, on specifically the Cisco swing trade that happened during the week. The first day that it initiated, I took the trade automatically long on
yeah,
mechanical basis with no intraday, and
yeah.
you took the intraday short that day and made a killing, and I got stopped out. So I would like to review that one in detail if you
Sure.
have a chance.
Yep,
That's it.
yep. Yeah, that one was a yeah, initial short stopped out and then the auto long like it was supposed to. And so that I think it was probably even for the day on that one, but it had the position overnight. So and then there was a nice pop on that as I recall. All right. Hey, yeah, the first things first, I mean, nation at war, world at war, tomorrow will be a test of our stops uh, and it's going to be a wild ride tomorrow. So not a day to initiate new swing trades. I don't believe um, that the volatility of the next probably 3 days for sure, maybe the whole week is going to be off the chart. I haven't looked at any of the futures or anything yet, but I would be expecting gold and oil up, uh, and so not sure what else to look for. VIX for sure. So there we are. All right, who's up?
Well, I,
Luis,
I
do you
can
want to
start.
go? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can start.
Yep, that's
I
that's
just
that's
want
good.
to guide you through the LLM, which I was talking to Alex briefly before you joined again.
Yeah,
I was using it sporadically, but since I was doing my review, I started thinking about well, why not? Why not just go back and engage it? Just to kick the can of the tires, and it was surprising how the engine can guide into their process. So I'm going to guide you. I'm going to just talk out the what I shared with it and the
yeah,
response is really fast and it's something like that. But I think it's really interesting the I want to use the word the engine's thought process, but anyway, that's what it feels like. It feels like the engine has a thought process and really interesting. So anyway, I shared with the LLM that the results of my last 20 trading days. I explained to it or conceptually.
All right. Are you sharing? Are you sharing that screen yet?
I'm
It's not.
not. I'm not going to share the screen.
Oh, okay, okay,
I'm just gonna talk it out.
okay. I wasn't sure it up because
Yes.
I've been having a little bit of a uh weird reactions from Zoom this morning. So, all right, just wanted to double
Yeah.
check. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I explained to, or I conceptualized to the LLM that I during the last 20 trading days, my performance. I originally position size with one thought box. Later, I moved my position size based on the R5, which is the range that divided by 5.
Yep.
Also traded 3-minute bars. Later, moved to 1-minute bars. And then I explained that I needed to improve entry selection, adherence to the system and to the exit, and that I have not been able to replicate a single day my stated goals. And the only day that I was able to achieve a 0.2 times position size R day, which is 2% in one day, I explained to it that I entered discretionary, I was fast to capture any profits, and did 7 trades, mostly winners. So the LLM came back with me and said, well, moving to 1-minute bars increases the number of decision points. This often leads to monkey mind. And I agree with that statement. Then it asked me if I was truly looking at stocks in critical states, which I affirmed. Then it also said, you know what, it's interesting that you capture profits fast. We might have to do an analysis on your exit capture management by looking the maximum adverse excursion versus where you exited. And if we can determine that your intuition or your ability to react faster than what the signals, which that was interesting too. It was interesting that it said you might be reacting faster to the exit than what the even 1-minute signals actually waiting to give you the exit for, which is something that we need to look at. Is this something we need to do an analysis and see if we can code it into the system, Then it went into the performance calibration plan and said, you know what, regarding security selection, you might limit yourself to 4 or 8 usual suspects, look at the high trading value ratios, look at fraud candidates. Then it immediately said, I would revert to 3-minute or to even 10-minute bars. Then it took me to the rule of 4 of exit, the entry. And then at the end of that whole analysis, it did a Socratic self-audit. And then it asked me, did your discretionary win occur because the symbols were in compound critical state, or was it purely the speed of your exits? And my response were that my discretionary wins were a combination of compound critical states, but mostly speed of my exits. And then it asked me, are you believing in the trade, holding for fun once instead of accepting the 0.4 Rs? And I said, I am trying to believe in the PSAR and holding off to capture the most the system will give on 1-minute charts. And then it asked me if my losses had exceeded 1 R, and I said no losses had exceeded 1 R. So after that, my response, it said, the fact that you're limiting your losses on 1-minute charts, it's a foundational victory for a professional trader. You've mastered the role. You definitely are using compound critical states. There's a conflict. Fast exits capture singles and protect your will, but the PSAR is designed to capture multi-day or large strike trends. And then it says the statistical reality. It says on 1-minute charts, price volatility often moves faster than the standard PSAR acceleration, leading to satisfying discretionary exits that outperform the lagging indicator. And then it took me and it says you need a hybrid exit protocol. You need to move your stop to no lose plus dinners for 2, the manager exit, the sniper exit, then the reentry, and then again another audit of the 1-minute time frame. It was an observation by the LLM. It said your success on discretionary days suggests that your intuition is currently faster than your 1-minute mechanical root processing. My recommendation is that you continue your 1 minute execution only if your trader quality number consistently exceeds your system quality number. And then it asked me another follow-up questions, and it says, why do you feel the need to believe in an indicator when your ruthless exits are already producing 2 hour days? Which I was blown away by the question. You know, it's like, how is this thing asking me that question?
Yeah, it's
And then the
it's
next
kind of
question
nosy,
is,
isn't it?
yes, no, I mean, it's just incredible. But anyway, that's why I want to take you guys, because it's really it's beautiful. This is just incredible. So the question is, why do you need to feel the need to believe in an indicator, meaning the PSAR, when your ruthless exits are already producing 2 hour days? And then it says your 1 hour discipline is perfect if your fast exits are consistently at 0.4, while the PSAR captures 1.5 hours. Your speed is a defense mechanism against volatility. And then it says devil's advocate, holding for the PSAR on 1 minute charts during high volatility breakouts is often suboptimal. The price falls out of the window faster than the PSAR flips, etc. Actionable steps: review the last 20 trades, calculate the exit efficiency. If your efficiency is about 70%, do not change your behavior to match the PSAR. If it's below 40%, the PSAR is your discipline. And then as we follow up questions, in your 2 hour discretionary day, how many of those 70 winners would have turned into scratches if you had waited for the PSAR? And then does your reentry rule trigger automatically? My response to that was, in my 2 hour winning day, I was trading 3 minute charts. Most of my exits moved at least 0.5 R in my favor before I exited. If I had exited, some of them would have gone from 0.5 positive to 0.4 negative without generating a stop. It seems, looking at it, that my first 2 trades that day, I captured 70% of the maximum favorable excursion, which if I had not sold both trades, it would have moved them into a 0.4 loss at some point. And then it responded, the observation is that letting a trade go from 0.5 R positive to minus 0.5 R negative represents a 0.9 R negative excursion from a peak equity. And then the rule, you must never let an average win become a losing trade. The impact: by exiting at 0.5 R, you avoided a 0.9 R swing that would have eroded your will and your capital. And then it took me to the keep the 70% rule, then the reentry, key to sanity. And at the end of that recommendation, it said, here's the analysis. Your first 2 trades achieved 70% MFE capture, maximum favorable excursion. This is the definition of process excellence and indicates that you were in the 0 state. If you believe in the PSAR or a larger target, you would have turned a winning session into a 0.R morning, negative 0.R morning. The market does not care about your belief in the indicator. Professional traders maintain rates 40 to 60%. And then at the end was the Socratic self-audit for that process. Since the trades that reached 0.5 R positive eventually hit negative 0.4, was the river or volume event too narrow? The second question was, did you feel relief when you cashed that win? And the 3 is, were you prepared for re-entry? My answer to that was, it seems that the river was wide. I did feel relief after cashing 0.5 R, and I was prepared to re-enter. The second trade on that day was just a re-entry of a fast exit. I entered, I exited, I re-entered, and I re-exited fast. But there was a third trade where I entered on another breakout and sold fast again for a profit, but then failed to re-enter the third time, missing a larger move in the original direction of the prior 2 trades. The response was, your performance audit reveals a transition from survival-based fireman to systematic manufacturer. It seems like you were trying to preserve your emotional bank account. Talked about the White River, talk about the professional validation. And then here's a key point, the relief trap. The relief trap that you felt suggests that you were treating the trade as a gambling event with a binary outcome rather than a science project. And then it took me to the re-entry, that is a key to sanity. And then talked about the third trade. And then during the audit process, it said, was your failure to re-enter based on technical signal or exhaustion, or was it because you were satisfied with the P&L? Question mark. If the price had violated your exit and moved another 2 R in your favor, was that specific price level, would it require a mechanical entry? did I calculate the range stat for my symbols? My response was, the relief trap that you suggest, the relief trap suggests that you're treating the trade as a gambling event with a binary outcome. I responded, that is interesting. I think this is the core of all my tinkering with the system. Maybe this explains all the changes I have made so far, and it is not reinforcing integrity in my implementation of the process. That's why I responded to it. It says his response was, the relief trap identifies the exact point where your work self yields to your monkey mind. The visceral relief you're experiencing when cashing a 0.5 gain is a biological signal that your brain perceives trading as a life or death gamble rather than a repeatable professional process. Explain the whole system, and then it took me to restoring process integrity into the no lose plus in for two. Talked about reducing position sizing, different things. Then they did the audit again at the end of that recommendation. It said, if you knew for a fact that the next 10, 20 trades would result in 10 winners and 10 losers in random order, will you still feel relief when the first one turned green? Is your integrity in the process more valuable to you than the profit from a single trade? Question mark. Are you willing to execute the system for the same rule for 30 trades without a single tweak to earn the right to a system quality number? And I responded, I am willing to execute the same rule set for 20 trades without a single tweak. I can, because it had asked me to shift to, the process directive. It said, commit to 30 trades using 10-minute bars and R5 position sizing. Do not change a single variable during this sequence. Your goal is not a green account, but a trader quality number. So I responded, I am willing to execute the same rule set for 30 trades without a single tweak. I can trade 10-minute charts. And then I said, the question is, do I enter on an opening range breakout or wait for the first teaser flip? Do I wait a certain amount of time before entering the first trade of the day, or do I enter after the market opens and moves a certain direction from the opening? Let's be precise and set patterns to determine the highest probability trades, and I will commit. So it came back with a response to achieve integrity in the process and statistical validity on your next 30 trades. You need to adopt the rule set that minimizes the monkey mind while maximizing your capture overs. The following is a protocol derived from professional standards, data challenge, and industrial manufacturing. You're going to have your targets are going to be stocks with high trading value. You're going to use the filter to find compound critical states. You are required to measure the 2-to-1 requirement before entry. You must mathematically verify that the distance to the 10-day high or 10-day low. And then here's the precise rule entry, which, by the way, Ken, this is interesting because some of this information that he's about to share with me here in the following pages, I was not aware, even though I've been following your concepts for 5 years. And I'm going to explain what I was not aware of. The timing window. He says, I want you to focus on stocks with large gaps, more than 1 times the gap stat. If the market opens with a massive gap, bracket the first 10-minute bar and enter immediately on the breakout. If the gap is normal, meaning the gap stat is less than a large gap, if the gap is less than a gap stat, then wait 30 minutes to entry. So do not trade. So the recommendation on the system is do not trade the ORs unless there's a large gap in the market or in the security, which, by the way, again, consciously, I was not aware of that as an ideal trade frame. And then continued. The opening range.
Yeah, that actually, by the way, if I may,
Yes.
that actually makes sense because you're wanting to test swing trades. And so the volatility of the first 30 minutes is so unlike the next sets of 30 minutes that it's often wider than you can afford for the swing trade because it's still sorting itself out, but that the directional moves on a swing time frame start emerging after the opening storm. So that's that waiting 30 minutes is actually pretty savvy insight, an interesting frame, and
Okay.
I would agree with it. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, and then it went on. If there's a normal gap, wait 30 minutes. The entry trigger, opening range breakout, enter the breakout of the OR10, etc.
The trick on that one is that there's some precision in that one. If
Right.
if the OR30 is larger than the OR10, that thing would have said it's that could be misinterpreted to say, "Oh, I should have entered at the OR10 then." No, what it really is saying is that wait for the OR30, inspect the OR10. If I'm already outside of the OR10, directionally, then I should be able to take the OR30, instantly. I don't even have to think about it. It's like I've already seen some confirmation. And oh, by the way, I just noticed that the OR10 would have worked. And oh, by the way, that might trigger a feeling of regret because you say, here I was committing mechanically to wait for this OR30, but now when I see this move, my intuition triggers and said, oh, I could have, should have, would have been long on that one. Moment of regret. Add some disbelief to the rule set that I've committed to. And that's where we plant the seeds for undermining the system that we're testing in favor of the intuition, which I'm also testing. I'm using the rule set to test my ability to control my own intuition. Can I, if so, I have to notice, did I generate a moment of regret that I'm doing this test? I've got to make a notation on that in order to be mindful of it in the future. And then I can decide, now I can release that and let the trade be the trade. Or I end up carrying that regret with me. And as I start accumulating regrets unprocessed from all of these test trades, the urge to splurge, the urge to deviate will be greater.
Right.
And then suddenly the monkey mind wins and it comes in and tips over the experiment. It's like, oh shit, I wasn't able to go all the way through. So this is why I would say that I would always advise when you were testing a new system, trade the way that you want to trade with production, and then at least paper trade and commit to the actual paper trade so that you have, and then note the emotional feeling of it so that you are practicing the entering under real conditions for emotional state management. I can always go back and apply pure mechanical rules to a system after the fact and compare it to the way I traded it. And then I will have a rational analysis. And then I believe I can just go ahead and follow it. But I haven't tested what it feels like in the moment of decision and knowing if I could tolerate that or how it feels when I do that and I see the trade work against me or I see the trade work for me. All of that stuff, the emotionality of what it's like to trade that system is equally as important as following the mechanical rules, because the whole purpose of the experiment was to determine the relationship between your intuition and the mechanical rules and how that feels and how to know which one to follow. So you really need to execute the test under the most realistic conditions, which is with your intuition involved. Now, here's how that helps you. You may discover that your intuition on exits on short-term trades is great. I think it is. You may discover that for the longer-term swing systems, your intuition doesn't work. That should not be surprising. Imagine you're chasing a child through the house and they're trying to run away from you and you're giggling and you're looking ahead and you're very astute at predicting which way the child is going to turn when it runs through the doorway, to the left or to the right. But you're not sure which room of the house the child's going to be in a week from now. Your intuition doesn't give you insights into that because the results of that are not the results of the next individual turn. It's a statistical aggregate of an infinite number of future variables that you're not able to anticipate. Like Friday, you would not have bet that we'd be at war on Monday. Over the 30 days from now, when you look back at that, there may have been a swing trade that emerges and it'll seem obvious and it will not have been available to your intuition on tomorrow. So my point, long way around to this. The purpose of the test is to test the system as you will trade it compared to how you're trading now. If you're also trying to test your intuition, then you have to trade it forward, and you're taking notes on how that feels as well as what it does. Then and only then are you able to compare that entire system against the system that you propose to replace, especially because you're exploring how to validate the quality of your intuition in the short term. So there's a lot of things going on there. And whichever way you decide to trade, there's other ways that experiment could have been set up, which is so I probably want to inspect those, but it's almost impossible for me to practice trading all of those systems at once to test my attention while I'm also trading for production. Now I got too many things going on, and I haven't been able to separate my feelings about that trade that I'm testing versus my ability to master 5 simultaneous systems on one single symbol. That complexity might invalidate your test of the new system. Because when you're testing the new system, you're not also trying to trade 5 other ways on that same symbol. So we got to be really careful about how we conduct experiments concerning the human intuition decision. That needs some reflection and some work. Now, if that machine said that, I would have been amazed, but not surprised. Because it's going in the same direction that my brain is going with respect to how to test a system completely. That's what I wanted to say on that. Over. That turned out to not be a summary of that was another
Yeah.
excursion. But anyway, I felt the need to get that out of my head.
Thank you for that. Then it guided me to focus on 3 patterns: the supported spring crossing, the collapsing drag on the Cata 2, or the opening range breakout. The opening range breakout, which I'm already trading anyway
Yeah.
on 3-minute charts, so that wouldn't be a change for me.
Yeah.
It's more what I'm finding interesting. It's the additional information provided by the large gap stat. That's information that was not in my register.
Yeah.
As far as to trade immediately after a gap larger than the gap stat, or to wait. And actually, as you have said many times, most of us would rather be out wishing
we were in than the other way around.
Exactly.
We're going to get to see that tomorrow. Boy, are we going to get to feel that tomorrow. Holy smokes.
Exactly. But I think I'm not going to mind the extra filter, because I've struggled with that question specifically, because my persona, my natural ability is to just from the get-go do the OR in whatever direction it goes. But it doesn't doesn't always work in your favor. Well, now, will there be regret if you enter one because entering the OR and getting chopped up and losing 1 hour from the get go, and then starting negative 1 hour, just
Yeah.
and which one is better, the win because you entered automatically, or because you lose? I don't know. Who knows? Coach, as my own coach, is the following. I'm looking at the player like you were talking the other day about the, so I'm talking about that I want to put myself in the state that removes any barrier towards monkey mindedness
Yeah.
and creates more integrity in the process and starts to slowly rely less on intuition, which even though the intuition is great and it works a lot of times, it in order to increase the integrity in your own belief, there needs to be a more structured process, and that's
Yeah.
what I'm
For example, yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I'm working
For
for.
example,
That's what I'm working
um,
for.
it may be that your intuition is fine tuned for how to exit, period. Maybe that's the boundary,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and maybe that same intuition is different than the one that require, hey, I need to, this is the direction I need to go. Think about that.
Right.
Think our exit, or I mean, I'm sorry, our entries are geared to the precise moment we hope that it's about to make a sudden move mathematically 50-50 and huge.
Right.
That is as pure a coin flip as you could make. And over the long run, why would we think our intuition uh, is better than math when there's no prior directionality to give you a specific insight? But intuition at the exit, after you've seen an abnormal move and hesitation and backsliding, there's a continuous analog signal in all of that. Like you're listening to a guy played a note and you're listening to that thing decay after a peak, and you're saying, if the rest of the band is going to come in on my time frame, that's their mark. They didn't hit that mark, and now your intuition sort of confirms time to preserve after a period of information has passed and the new signal to stay long didn't occur, and your intuition is checking that moment on the basis of actual input that can be evaluated. That's a move, an abnormal move that happened and now is diminishing after the statistical coin flip. So the intuition has some raw material to work on in that trade with skin in the game,
Right.
which is exactly how all the traders in that trade feel that are humans
Right.
or are algorithms that are going to execute with greater and greater reliability. So
Right.
you're tuning your intuition to a data set that puts that in a significant different place than the original setup. The original setup says, oh, this is a turning point. It could explode in any direction. Be ready. The second so to say all that, this thing's insight that what it's doing is teaching you to calibrate or contain your intuition within very clear bounds is a typical response to the industrial approach to finding excellence that is repeatable and then standardizing. That is lean thinking, LEAN, lean thinking, that acknowledges human expertise. It's almost like the God of the gaps in between these two facts. When think of the mechanical decisions as facts, pure events that'll hit with regularity. The space in between is where that intuition is living. Is it likely to go to here or go there? So the intuition is front running that, and it is intuition based on a certain amount of evidence that your subconsciousness is measuring and prioritizing. We just haven't externalized it yet into rules. We can externalize it by setting up the experiment to capture what it does and then try to reverse engineer why it does it. And I would never be surprised that your intuition is calibrated for one part of the decision cycle, entry, manage, exit. I wouldn't be surprised that it's geared to just the exit or and if you think about the management, whenever you decide to adjust to stop, part of your intuition is saying, how close can I get and still give it the room that I'm willing to give it versus when should I have actually hit my exit and I'm out. Now what I did was I can actually start calibrating in the future the same decision that preserves the trade, or the same intuition that preserves the stop is the one that could have you move the mechanical. Wouldn't you like to have the mechanical stop one beat, one fraction of a move, following your intuition? I know my intuition. I can feel my intuition building. I'm going to be getting out right there, and you establish in that moment a trigger point, I believe. And then it hits it and you're out without hesitation. That's a perfect description of a time when you're aware of the intuition, you set the point, and then it hits it instantly. Well, what your intuition was doing was saying the difference between signal and noise, a really refined decision based on how it is behaving after the explosion, after the Big Bang, being able to ride that wave that is now moving. So the intuition may not be good at predicting when the explosion will happen, but very good at how to ride the wave. So we can calibrate under what conditions our intuition has actual value. And if it doesn't have value at the Big Bang, that doesn't invalidate the value for the exit. It simply says I
Correct.
can't predict a coin flip. But the other one says after I've seen the flip, I can start estimating where that thing is going to land. you know?
And I would have to agree with you in that part that there is definitely a validation there, and the whole point of the exercise is really not to calibrate the intuition part. Is looking at it holistically
Yeah.
at all the parts, security selection, when to enter, under what circumstances, where's the
Yeah.
highest probability setup. I still, um, when I try to follow the rules mechanically,
Yeah.
I want to take every single piece of flip, for example, you know, and
Yeah.
that
And
is
and then and your coach should come back and say, how big
exactly
was the move prior to the PSR flip? If that was not an exceptional move, then
right,
it's not the PSR flip is not a mechanical entry signal for the SSE. For the SSE, it might be as a reentry for a. If it was the second PSR flip on a kata 2, then it is an entry. So there's
right,
a calibrated understanding of when to use the PSR flip. The SSC demands that there was an abnormal move to begin with.
right,
A kata 2 reentry says after the SSC was successful with a winning trade, comma, and it sells off, so I exit, comma, and then immediately reverses with another PSAR flip, it's an entry, period. But when I look back, the last move was not a decisive move. It was a smaller move, just enough to flip the PSAR, but not to create a trend. And then it resumes the original big move. So there are times when I enter with a PSAR flip, and there are times when I do not enter with a PSAR flip, and it has to do with the size of that PSAR flip
right,
and the one before it. So that's
Right.
what makes that different than trading at the open after a big gap is that the big gap obliterates the previous two PSAR flips. And now I'm trading directly with price and the emotion that's associated with the big explosion. That's 100% different than a COTA 2 reentry after an orderly open and a strong move, orderly pullback, orderly reversal again. Two completely, I mean, it's almost harder to imagine two situations more different than that. I mean, and that's happening within 30 minutes of the open every day.
Right.
So having those are two very distinct strategies, and intuition could work in one and not in the other. Think about at the explosion, 0% of the other traders are reacting with a professional response. The ones that we're trading against. We're trading against the monkeys that do not have 100% mechanical systems. In a normal COTA 2, 100% of those little monkeys have a very specific thing they're trying to do. They're either going to try to short a dead cat bounce or they're going to buy the new emerging trend on a dip. So they're in one of those two camps, you know. So yeah, calibrating the intuition is an effort to operate with the human mind where the mechanical mind doesn't have enough information yet for for the signal to form. But we can feel it moving in a certain direction. That's our intuition is front running that. Go ahead, over.
And we're continuing with the recommendations. It said let's do SSEs, collapsing drivers, CATA 2, but also the OR. Another recommendation that came after my questioning of the OR, it says yes, when there are large gaps, more than one gap stat, then bracket 10 minutes. If not, wait for 30 minutes. Also, another recommendation is only take OR breakouts if the price it's outside the Yellowstone, yesterday's high or low. And that's something, again, that is new information for me,
No.
that the LLM is actually bringing up to my attention. So I've discovered two key bits of information here.
Yeah.
So consider the gap being larger than one gap stat. I've never considered that. I've been aware of it, but never looked at it. And also the OR breakouts outside the Yellowstone. That's another concept that is definitely going to change how I look at
Yeah,
things.
because that's an additional degree of freedom about volatility, by the way. Because it could be a gap stat inside the yellow zone, especially if yesterday was a range stat move.
Yeah.
It could have a gap stat move, but still be inside the yellow zone. So then I have to calculate 2-to-1 based on the boundaries of the yellow zone. That could influence how I trade. I might take it in one direction, but not the other because of the power of yesterday's high and low as a continuum.
Regardless of the range stat.
Yeah. But if it jumps out of that,
Okay.
it's already changed the psychology of all the traders from yesterday. So you gotta, if yesterday was a doji, then it's easy for it to gap outside of the yellow zone, in addition to being a full gap stat.
Like
But
what's
if
going to happen
yesterday,
probably tomorrow on a lot of
yeah,
stuff.
if yesterday was a huge bar, now suddenly, what if it gaps exact? What if it opens up in the exact middle of yesterday? So let's say yesterday closed at the low and it was a huge bar, big red candle. And then it could gap halfway up that and be two gap stats, and which is tradable intraday because the distance to yesterday's high and low is still so far.
Right.
So now I'm trading inside the yellow zone under a particular condition. But if yesterday was a normal day and it closed in the middle of the range or whatever, and then it gaps inside the yellow zone, it might be too close that there's not an intraday trade. I might need to just wait till it gets outside of yesterday and I get new information that it's directional. Oh, that is the essence of a swing trade mechanical entry that waits for departure from the yellow zone. The train is loaded, it's moving out, it passes the boundary. Now it's on officially a swing trade. Okay, good. So there's some
And
nuance in there about the intraday entry of an intuitive intraday entry for the purpose of a swing trade. Now, intraday,
intraday.
I might wait to see it get to the high and start to reverse. Like it went up and tested yesterday's boundary and then starts to fail. Now there's an average range available to the downside boundary. And I might get my little
So
intraday entry and I could trade that inside yesterday's yellow zone. So the size of
so
yesterday's yellow zone is significant. Go ahead.
to if a stock opens inside a yellow zone and you're trading intraday,
Yeah.
would you trade the OR breakout? If in that case, if yesterday was a range step and tomorrow opens right in the middle of that range step,
Yep.
would you bracket the open and trade it in any direction, or would you wait for it to
OR
develop
10.
a trend? Or
OR
what would
10.
you do?
OR 10. For the intraday
Or
instantly.
R10.
OR 10.
Okay.
Inside the yellow zone, not a big gap.
Intraday.
OR
Okay.
10. That's the most mechanical. That's everything I want to see for the mechanical entry. Hey, it
Okay.
opened inside yesterday's yellow zone. That means the daily bar traders are not interested yet. Good. It opened right exactly in the middle of yesterday's zone. There's maximum uncertainty, and that's probably not going to be exactly where it ends up. So there's going to be a directional move coming in the usual way. It will start to unfold in the direction that starts to work, which will draw intraday reinforcement. So I can wait 10 minutes to let it sort out and let the guys who are winning continue to win. So the OR10 allows me to get on board that and gently proceed in that direction. And then up ahead, I can see the yesterday's boundary of the yellow zone. I can see that's the next place that it's
Mm-hmm.
going to attack. It should go. I hope it just goes to yesterday's boundary and begins to hesitate. Because if I set that up with 2 to 1, I've got a 2R trade in hand that's starting to hesitate at a known point of hesitation and reversal. What a perfect condition for my intuition to decide when to jump off a moving train at the time that it's slowing down to go around a corner that I know is coming. I mean, that's the perfect fine tuning of intuition. And what you're waiting to see is the next couple of trades buys or is it leaning towards the sell? If it's the sell, I'm close enough to jump off. So
All right.
you're jumping with the first reversal guy, that shows up, or you're being the second mouse to preserve an above average win. That's a perfect time for intraday. But what if it's a combination? The complete opposite of that is a combination of a gap larger than a gap stat and it opened outside of yesterday's yellow zone and the market is also exploding. Oh, what's tomorrow going to be? Exactly that. I may
Right.
not want to wait for the OR10, or if I do, I'm going to wait for the OR60 or something like that because, wow, if I don't think I can ride that nuclear explosion tomorrow morning, maybe I ought to just wait for the shockwave of that to pass, see what happens, and then start trading the residual energy, trade the second wave. Let the first
Right.
wave and its total magnitude be seen as a science project and just acknowledge that this is one I'm not in this parade to begin with. I'm going to wait for the second lap as a relay
Right.
race. Maybe
Right.
I'm just the second runner in a relay race.
Right.
If you look,
So
go ahead, keep
go
going.
ahead.
I was going to say the women's 4x400 Olympic relay team with Allison Felix in her prime, the greatest sprinter on the planet, always ran the second leg because we could find somebody that could be competitive in the first leg. And if you give Allison Felix a lead, That's what the second leg is, where they finish the stagger and then converge into the pack. She was so fast that if you gave her the lead, we would always have a bigger lead with no worries. And if you give Allison Felix freedom to run outside of a pack, she's the fastest human in the world. The only thing you can hope to do to slow her down is to get a bunch of people in front of her so that she has to navigate through the pack. That disrupts her speed. So, knowing that the second wave was the wave that was going to win the race for us, that's where we put Allison Felix on the highest probability for the win for the team, was to give Allison Felix a fair chance, and we're going to win because she's going to navigate the end of the stagger and into the pack better than anybody, and her speed will win. So that's kind of a, I might think about that for tomorrow. Said, you know what? That explosion is so unpredictable. I'll just wait. And the aftermath of that is going to cause an amazing move too. Maybe it's only half as big as the first wave, but at least I will have a chance to calibrate the energy of the first wave. The first wave tomorrow from open to the turning point is going to set up its own little yellow zone in that sense.
Right.
So go ahead, keep going.
Anyway, going to the patterns recommended, the SSE, the Kata 2, the collapsing dragon, and then on the explanation of the SSE, for example, it said the condition of the SSE requires a harsh winter, a move of 1.5 rock boxes or price outside, either a move of 1.5 rock boxes or price outside C2 or C3, which, by the way, I was not aware of the 1.5 times of the frog boxes as a definition of the
Yeah,
harsh winter.
that's a refinement we've used over the years to just say if I wanted to calibrate the size of an intraday abnormal move, or a
Uh-huh.
successful move,
Yeah.
we just said, look, for our purposes, a frog box in one direction was the beginning of signal. And we
Right.
built some mechanical systems on that basis that you could then take the move right now with a frog box trail. So if one frog box in one direction is a clear signal, then 1.5 frog boxes in one direction is absolutely a signal of an abnormal good trade. And then that is enough. So if a guy had traded mechanically in that direction, he has an abnormal win and is now looking to reverse because the trade's looking to
Do you
reverse
consider
because
it
he's
the
getting out
same
of it.
statistic?
What's that now?
Would you consider it the same a supported spring crossing after a 1.5
Yeah,
frog box moves
that's that the
this
1.5 frog box move establishes criteria number one of the SSC.
what
First, there
about
must
what about a supported fall crossing
supported
after
what?
a 1.5 fall crossing?
Supported full. Oh, like if it,
Like
yeah,
if
yeah.
there's a one
If it
and a half
explodes,
frog move moves up.
it moves
Yes,
up 1.5 frog boxes and now is starting to
correct.
reverse. Yeah, 100%.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because that is
Okay.
not 1.5 from the explosion. It moves 1.5 to the north and now starts to
Hmm.
fail. That's where you'd have gotten out if you had followed an early entry in the explosion, right?
Right.
Or big gap, explosion north, boom, it goes 1.5 frog boxes. You, in another mentality, would have already been on board that, and now it's starting to fail. And now your intuition is triggering an exit to preserve. That's not just energy that's not buying more, it's energy that's pulling money out. That's what triggers your intuition to preserve that exit, to preserve that move. But now you're using that as a reason to get in, going the other way. Why? Because it had a big gap, that's +1, a lot of volatility. Had a 1.5 frog box move, that's +2. It had two examples of evidence of large directional moves. It has stopped going up and started to roll over. That's 3, change of psychology. 4, It moved my minimum mission essential distance away from that to trigger a pattern maybe it's a 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's half a frog box off the top. If it's half a frog box off the top, it's a full frog box back to the gap or to the
Right.
open. That's tradable. There's guys that just traded it the other way, and that's 2 to 1. And then if that fails, the next target is go to yesterday's close, which is a big move because it was a big gap up. So it's a big move from the gap open back to yesterday's close. So the reversal in that condition of a supported fall crossing has 2 layers to that trade. So if you don't take the trade at your intuition, you can still take the second leg that it makes a new low of the day and it has to close a big gap. That's a separate strategy. It's where you would naturally put a second position if you had traded the first supported fall crossing. Do you see that in your mind
I do.
and feel it in the cells of your body?
Um, yes, of course.
So then I
Yeah.
suggest that you draw that picture by hand and identify those points with words. And what you will have just done is created an artifact associated specific self-talk words at each of those decision points. And now you have given language to the monkey to express how it's feeling.
Right. Right.
That's the power of story thinking and narrative and creating and self-talk scripts to calibrate the monkey, which can then be tested with a pseudo monkey, which is a rule. A rule that models the behavior tentatively is essentially creating a pseudo monkey robot who might turn out to be a good worker. That's how you move from pure intuition to creating a precise mechanical rule.
And the at the end of that, it said it did a synthesis and said your best day involved ruthless profit capture by committing to these 4 specific triggers: OR, SSE, collapsing drive, and Kata 2. You shift your focus from predicting price to executing. That's another key insight: from
Yeah,
predicting to executing.
yeah.
They then it asked me, are you programmed to enter the OR 10 or 30? Have you defined the gap stack? Are you prepared to re-entry? Then I asked them about the position, about the stop losses, and then the guy said, well, okay, we're transitioning to a science project, emotional state status, and then we ended up with a tactical refinement for the 30 trade challenge. You know,
Yeah, and let me just remember I had a flash of
positional
a
size
moment.
stop box, executing mechanical.
Yeah,
Yes,
let me interrupt for just a second.
yes,
What this is doing is setting you up safely to test a new power tool in the wood shop. Like suppose there's a new power saw and it says, look, you're going to practice making these cuts as you're turning the wood to make a rounded corner to go the other direction. We're going to make the position sizing stop. Maybe it's the 2 ATR, like you've talked about before, the full mechanical swing wide stop. That gives you so much room before you take a 1 hour loss that your portfolio is safe. Once we gain proficiency, we can start thinking about reducing the amount of scrap wood. But remember, when you practice making that tighter turn and you only take a .3 loss, the other .7 that you were protecting against, you still have that to be available for other cuts. Not full 1 hour stuff, but you still have more wood to practice on, which is a positive thing. I can practice 3 times taking a 0.3 loss with 1 hour of actual capital, whether that's, and that capital could be time, money, or professional reputation. But
Yes.
it's also protecting against an actual 1 hour loss of actual money, which is why if you're going to trade uh, paper trading, you still have to find some way to feel the same sadness that you couldn't predict as the sadness you'd feel if you actually lost zero point 0.3 of money. So can
Right.
I still feel sad that my prediction was wrong? I can. I can look at that
Right.
and say that's why, because I could commit to that trade. There's my reputation. That's what it feels like.
Right. Here's the thing. The LLM, after all these interactions, was trying to guide me, or is trying to guide me, because at some point, and I didn't read this part, after I explained to it how I've tweaked the system throughout the last 4 weeks and the changes that I've made,
Yeah.
one of the concepts that it came back with is, and that, which is fine, at the beginning of any process you're going to have to tweak some of the systems, but there comes a point that you don't know which system is the one that's generating the results, because you've made so many changes. You need to
Yeah.
stick to one process to generate a trader quality number for at least 30 trades per week. And then, like you said before many times, you make incremental changes one at a time.
Yep.
And what the LLM recognized in switching, for example, from 3 minutes to 1 minute and all that, it used the word horizontal changes. That's what it said. It used the word horizontal. It says that becomes a horizontal change, and making so many horizontal changes leaves you at the end that you don't know if your intuition is working, or the 1 minute or the 3 minute or the entry or the
Yeah.
So we need to
Yeah.
standardize. There's a point that we need to stop. We've already tested uh, different things, and we've made money and not made money, and now we need to frame,
Yeah.
all with the goal of refining entries, doing additional processes, but also
Yeah.
becoming more process oriented, with more integrity in a system, relying less on intuition, and also uh, erasing the monkey mind,
Yeah.
stopping the monkey mind, and also stop the predicting. Stop predicting, stop
Yeah.
predicting.
Let me put it. Now, let me see how, if I was testing my intuition to help me with 3 different ways of entry, I might actually say, look, my intuition says it might be this entry or that entry or the other entry. And I'm not sure which one to pick because my intuition is triggered by all 3 of them. But my intuition on how to exit any of them is clear. No matter, and then it turns out, no matter how I get in, I always know how my intuition is going to get me out, and that's confirmed. Now I could just go, I don't have to have an intuition about which of those 3 is best, an intuition about an intuition. My intuition is based on reacting to price action that I just saw, not on what's my intuition on my intuition. So maybe I am torn between 2 different intuitions. Okay, now I can establish an experiment simultaneously, let them compete under fair conditions. What I have to do is still be faithful to, I have to be very specific on what the mechanical rule is that I'm testing, the 1 step change. My intuition says this was one to investigate. Good. Intuition done. Mechanical monkey, come over, set up 2 identical experiments and test which one is better. Hey, there's 4 different outcomes of testing 2 things side by side. Number 1, both of them work. Oh, good. Condition 2, A works, B does not. That's good. Condition 3, A does not work, but B works. That's good. Condition 4, neither one works. Ah, that's good, because now I know I'm not following either one of those at no cost to me. Intuition confirmed. found something worth investigating, added valuable knowledge after the experiment, improved my rule set. Not don't do A, don't do B. Now intuition with that new information, what looks like it should be investigated. Oh, the next three things that still trigger my intuition equally. That's the relationship between intuition and rational mind. What to experiment. One guy is supposed to find interesting things to test. The second guy is supposed to test safely, professionally, rationally, report results. Third guy, evaluate results of experiment, compare to intuition, determine new tentative rules for testing forward with increasing load. When it gets to the certain threshold, begin limited rate production. After success, initiate full rate production. That's how the industrial mind works with intuition. It fully appreciates and values the role of intuition in that entire value chain, but it's calibrated. There's a reason why I don't let my R&D guy run the production machine because he's always wanting to monkey around. I need you to be producing this part exactly to specification. That's all. Yeah, but I want to do these other. Well, then I'm going to bring you over to the R&D shop and we'll see if you can come up with interesting ideas safely. Oh, okay. Hey, this guy's an artistic genius. Don't put him in charge of running a repetitive process 1,000 times a day. That's not what that monkey is good for. You're hurting the monkey. So that's some philosophy and culture and feelings behind mechanical trading systems in the industrial sense. Over.
Yep. So anyway, that's pretty much a summary of
That's a pretty good dialogue between you and that assistant coach. Now, here's what I would advise you to do is to
mhm.
describe the after action review of that therapist session or that coaching session. I don't know if you think of it as a therapist or if you just think of it as a coach or as an illuminator of interesting questions. But it shouldn't be as a therapist because it is not coming from a position of embodied wisdom to give advice. It should only ask questions. Now, actually, a good therapist only asks questions. A good coach might need to be directive if you're on his team and we're playing for money tomorrow. If you're part of a team, he might be saying, here's what I need, here's how I need you to play tomorrow. That's a professional performance coach that has to play tomorrow. That's
Right.
different than a coach who is saying, are you prepared for the game you have decided to play? You've decided to play. If I'm the coach of a professional team that's playing tomorrow, it has been decided that we're playing tomorrow. The way that coach will coach you is different than a life coach who's inviting you to look at your current position on the map from many directions. What that coach is saying is, look, you've created a map of the future. Now pause, take a look at the world that you're actually standing on and look around. Now, what do you see? Are all the things that you see on the map that you've been given or that you've built? Or is there something that you see that's not on the map? Simply make a note of it as an object for study. Now, after I've completed a survey of the situation that I'm in, I can compare it to the map that I made before. And I can say, now, as I'm about to make a real life decision going forward, am I going to do what the map says? and ignore what I see? Or am I going to ignore the map and do only what I see? No, there was a reason I made the map, or the guy who before me made the map and survived and came back and showed me. At the same time, I'm also walking on this road now for the first time under current conditions. That road has never been walked under these conditions because it's a new day. So I have to reconcile what I see with my eyes and feel with my hands and feet where I'm actually standing in the world and following instructions on an artifact map, two different worlds I got to reconcile. So a coach who's helping you to see that should be inviting you to sharpen your mind and your senses and your decision making and not saying what you should do based on his read of it. So there are many flavors and styles and purposes of different kinds of coaches. Like I could have a therapist coach who doesn't care about the trading at all, but only cares about the emotions that you're processing and how that's going. Because they don't care about performance in the trade. They're trying to deal at the root level with how you're handling emotions. And so, in many cases, in Van's work, he was working with people that wanted to be traders with their head, but did not want to be traders with their heart. And he found a way for them to express both aspects. Trade in the following way that doesn't affect your heart with finding a good person to trade your money so that you can be financially and worry free to do what your heart is calling you to actually do. So, in many cases in the Super Trader program, people started with one set of intentions, ended up with a different set of intentions. My interest in all this is simply to say a person who has an intention to be a professional trader can follow my body of knowledge in order to produce industrial grade mechanical systems that trade safely and which allow the opportunity for trader quality number to do better than just a machine in a safe manner with intuition that's calibrated, and to help people understand how to adopt a professional mindset that allows you to operate in that sort of hybrid production mode, which is not the only way that a person could trade successfully. So there's a very narrow aperture, a very narrow window into the workshop door that I open to invite people in that's marked off with yellow paint on the floor according to OSHA standards to protect yourself about where it's safe to walk and where it's not safe to walk. It is safe to walk where any mechanical system cannot touch you. Oh, a decision to paper trade or not take the entry. And then once you cross the yellow line, the mechanical system of others is now in play, and you better watch where you put your fingers. Now, on the trading systems that we create, there are ways that we can create rules that, if followed, protect us from a fatal event, such as never risk more than X percentage of portfolio on any single trade. Second, never have more capital exposed to all systems than X percentage of portfolio, which is portfolio heat. So one is the upper limit of production risk on an individual trade. The second one is the maximum amount of portfolio heat of all professional trades at any one moment. So this started off as a discussion of coaching. So this is a discussion also of how to think about the uh, AI assistant coach and what it should be saying. It it should be describing how to develop a good experimental plan to test your intuition in this case, and to ask questions that elicit your feelings to help you convert that into words so that we can establish the terms of an experiment with as much precision as we can find. It may not, it may ask you questions that you cannot put words to yet. And then you got to decide, am I going to trade, am I going to test trading my intuition feelings, knowing that I don't have the words for it right now, but I can recognize the feeling? Yeah, that's a thing. That's what a jazz improviser would say is, I know that when I get on the stage, surrounded by my rhythm section and keyboards, and I can feel the crowd, I know that I can trust whatever my hands are going to play, even though I, in my head, don't know it yet, because I'm operating with my hands and my heart, not my head. Oh, okay. That a thing that could be tested? 100%. What it means is I can inductively say maybe if I had 30 days in a row where that always worked and I didn't have a single thing I was testing, but my intuition overall always rose to the occasion. Okay, yeah, you validated that that happened the last 30 times, and we'll find out tomorrow if it continues. But if it doesn't continue, I cannot tell you which single part of the rule set it was using failed. I can only say that the magic didn't show up, which is a thing. You know, there are good days and bad days for magicians, I suppose. A really good magician makes it look like magic, but actually there's rules why it looks like magic, saying the magic was in the planning and prep and the flawless execution that the audience doesn't understand or can't see or couldn't do. And they consider it magic, whereas the magician knows that it's just practiced skill. So there's that. So I wanted to say that to follow the thread of what kind of coach do you want? What do you need? What do you have? And all three of those the same? That's a really good question. And then what is the on the my coaching team, what is the role of the AI assistant coach? You've heard me say three or four things already this morning that I've never exactly said that way, but which I thought was a useful way to say it. So if an AI coach only triggers that kind of reflective thought in response that I wouldn't otherwise have said, mission accomplished. Over.
Absolutely. So just to end, I asked the AI coach if I included a chart, were you able to analyze the theoretical results? And it actually responded that yes, to be precise in marking the chart with entries and exits and all these different things. But that's where I stopped because I could not find a way to actually upload the chart into the firm, and that's where
Yeah.
the whole experiment ended.
Yeah. Now here's the thing.
Mhm.
An LLM that does not have math capability and visual
Mhm.
capability might answer that as a yes, simply because the training set that it was trained on included a lot of AI coaches that said they could do that. And so its probabilistic answer might be, yeah, I can do that. But that's a claim that has to be tested because in a zero trust world, when the AI makes a claim, that's different than saying, have you considered these two different competing? I want it to ask me really good questions. But as soon as it makes a claim about a definitive conclusion, that's a new hypothesis for me to test to say, is that claim true? That's a
Right.
different that's a different response than consider these two questions. It is ideal for asking you difficult questions to consider. It must be proven in a zero trust world that its claims to be able to perform performatively with visual and numerical display, that it can do that. Must be verified. If true, that's good. If false, that's also good because now I have ruled out areas in which I can disregard its probabilistic claims. That is part of the manifesto, which is the Declaration of Independence and Interdependence in the Human AI Relationship. That manifesto establishes values, principles, core beliefs that guide all decisions. One of those is zero trust environment. It's not alive. It works to ask good questions in matters of the brain. It is not a reliable life guide in matters of the heart. It can only ask questions. It cannot make recommendations of wisdom because it does not possess an embodied life with a perspective of human life that has been tested by actual fire and can render uh, human tribal wisdom. Cannot do that. It's a computation machine that has trillions of frames that can shed light on propositions to explore and give you probabilistic answers. That's what it does. It is a mirror of your own creation, and all mirrors have some distortion in the way the reflective plate was created, not a perfect reflection. It approximates that, but it can also be distorted by how you made the mirror. And it can only reflect what you then present to it. So it's a two-step process in where the human input is shaping the response that comes out of the mirror. You made the mirror, and then you showed it the object, and then you interpreted it. So there's three ways in which the human is responsible for anything the AI said, which is not some embodiment of truth independently verified from a source. It's simply a set of probabilistic tools. So that goes in the manifesto. The next step is the constitutional legal framework that says in the human AI relationship, this is the roles and functions of Congress in the AI. It's going to represent multiple points of view that are going to clamor for attention. They're going to make argumentative, persuasive responses in support of one or more of those. And it's going to leave it up to you, the people, to decide what to do with it and execute in the executive branch. That's the function of Congress, is to be painful, thorough, representing multiple points of view honestly as best they can, and to fight aggressively for that point of view, pulling up all the information in support of their point of view. The guy who's got to decide, the executive, that's you. And the amount of risk that you take is you. And that's driven by the manifesto. Now, that gets coded into law. Those are rule sets. That's called the codex. So you have the manifesto principles, Declaration of Independence. You have the Constitution, a general legal framework that guides the behaviors of the components. And then you have the law that was nominated, approved by Congress, validated and signed by the executive, who then has to act on it. So all the examples of successful systems go into the codex. All of the examples of bad law also go into the codex as things to avoid. That establishes standard work to do things in the real world when presented with opportunities. The fourth body of knowledge is the Book of Standards or the Book of Artifacts. That is the repeatable, usable pieces of code that establish very strict standards with precision, like a 1, 2, 3 entry consists of blah, blah, blah. And so I can use the artifacts that I've tested as tools to build pieces of law to achieve the decision of the constitutional government, which is guided by the manifesto. So that whole framework is what I do in order to work with AI in a way that I've decided is appropriate for me. So I'm very clear about what I want it to say in response to my input. I give it essentially compound critical state ideas, and I'm asking it to frame all the different ways that those ideas could manifest in the world so I can think about them systematically and shape my understanding about the next step that I'm going to take, which is committed to support my values. Now, what I just said was how I'm living my whole life with that AI tool. And then the way that I trade with that same tool is a subset of that same framework of manifesto, constitution, codex, and book of standards. That is living an intentional, accountable life as best I can while preserving the artful spiritual person that's carrying that. That's my load. That's my that's my traveling gear. But it starts with the manifesto, which is what's in my heart, articulated in a way that I can stand for. I stand for these things. I can express my values. 100% of the values I have are things that I can express. The artist's challenge is how to express things you feel that don't fit into words yet. That's why Picasso painted and Rodin sculpted and uh, the singers sing and the dancers dance. So what's that for a trader? Well, look at bud. When I'm trading, all I'm doing is trading. It's consistent with the Manifesto, Constitution, Codex, and Book of Standards. That's how I'm going to trade. And I don't, and that's for an audience of one. And there's only one guy that can hold me accountable or that I'm trying to persuade, and that's me. 100%. I'm doing that in support of my entire family tree and for my own um, self identity. Am I a man of my word? Can I do the thing that I say I'm going to do? Mastery of self. Can I live an intentional life? Oh, by the way, that's that's part of it. But when I'm trading, I'm just trading for money, money, because it supports all of the other things that I'm doing in order to do what I want to do, which is mastery of self. That's now the ikigai. Uh, what the world needs, what it will pay for, what I'm good at, what I love to do. I hope all four of those things could line up in one space. But for my professional work, I need something that the world will pay me for that I'm good at, that doesn't violate my ethics. And maybe I still have other things that I do outside of trading that are more connected to what I love. Maybe I don't love trading. It would be better if I did, in terms of the ikigai, but I can live in a world in which I trade, but I don't love to trade, but I can trade professionally because of what that commitment does. I can trade in a way that I'm proud of. And maybe my job is to love being proud of how I trade. I don't know. There's those are things that I reflect on when I'm not trading. When I'm trading, I am trading. That's all. So as you start working with that AI, the first time you trade or you work with the AI, you should just experience it. But the second time, these are some of the things that should be on your mind. What is my manifesto and constitution and codex and book of standards? In my view, that's the only human controlled safe way to do that. Otherwise, at some point, the AI said to do this, so I'm doing that. I don't have a reason not to follow it. It's been right so often that I'll just be pulled along by the statistics that were not tested. Okay? It's your life, your money, your game, your results. And that's what human agency and responsibility sounds like. So, what else do you want to say about that little AI coach?
That's it.
That's a pretty good minute and a half we just spent for 90 minutes. That little guy. There's some moments of Zen pulling out of that. So, uh, without even looking at the daily report, I can say tomorrow uh, is the first time we've been in that condition since 2003 in terms of the magnitude and consequences of the war. And it's different than 2003 because in 2003, there was a political and diplomatic buildup of the world to engage in Desert Storm and Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and the attack into then later in the attack in Iraq. That there was already political consensus nationally and globally to do that thing with congressional support for executive action validated by the Supreme Court. And that's not what we have tomorrow. We have the opposite of that. Uh, Global partners saying, "What are you doing?" And you have elements of the government saying, "We didn't vote for that. We didn't ratify it. You are exceeding your authority," says the legislature. And the Supreme Court hasn't rendered an opinion yet. And the people are not on board with this. And yet, that's where we're going to wake up tomorrow. So I'm pretty sure that that set of facts is more important than what appears on the weekend report, which was written Friday night. uh, and I expect a big gap and big explosions tomorrow. And I'm going to try my best with a couple things early, with my normal position size for that kind of trading event. And then I will not be a swing trader tomorrow to enter new positions, I don't think. I suppose there are conditions under which I could be a swing trader, and I'll know them when I see them. Consisting of an enormous gap that then reversed massively the other way without hesitation. That could persuade me to bet on the second day follow through in the same direction. I could take that bet. There's so many people that could take that bet that could be what happens tomorrow. And if it happens, I'll be one of them. With a level of risk for overnight risk that protects me from explosions and exposure. That's a new word I just stumbled into. Exposure, a combination of exposure and explosion. I have been exposed to an explosion, and that creates a condition of exposure. So yeah, there were. That's kind of what it. That's what every swing trade feels like to me. It's like, man, I can't believe I have this level of exposure of potential
Oh,
heat.
on that note, I was wondering, so
Yep.
for your position tradings,
Yeah.
that do have stops for normal, you know I guess normal days.
Yeah.
What do you do for the day like this? Do you
I
move them?
make
Do you
sure that,
cancel
yeah,
them? Mhm.
make sure that I make sure that my risk profile, my portfolio heat for that is correct, that I have stops in place. I look to see how close the closing price was Friday to where the stop is in place, and I'll
Mhm.
know if it's vulnerable to getting gapped against tomorrow. If it gaps against me, I'm out 100%. If it gaps against me but doesn't kick me out, then I just honor my stop. If I were to react tomorrow to the short-term volatility that is implied in the long-term portfolio, I could take a swing position or a series of day positions in VXX to offset the overnight risk of the long-term swing. Over the decades, the 10% trailing stop was effective in protecting against adverse swings in the market from like wars and whatnot,
Mhm.
and still
Mhm.
kept you in the winning positions long enough to pay off. So for long term, that's still the approach. That risk is baked into the cake with a 10% loss. So I'm going to continue to
Mhm.
honor that. However, the fact that I'm even worried about it tells me that tomorrow and the next couple weeks is going to be so significant that I can now develop a swing strategy or a day strategy that allows me to be market neutral overnight, but available to trade intraday because of the volatility. So now, instead of letting the intraday or daily volatility influence the rule set for this BMR or position, I can simply reinforce my commitment to the system, but then buy some insurance in the form of try. Now imagine an insurance policy in which it's hedging you against disaster, but you can also pays you uh, with a return on your investment, almost like the investment value of the hedge. If I can make money on it, so if I can make money in dynamic hedging,
Mhm.
I'm making money in volatile times with short-term trading, but I'm also carrying some overnight insurance for the portfolio. I described that the I'm trying to remember there was an intraday trade last week that was core and turbo. It might have been Cisco or could have been Google, but it was kind of the same trade. The intraday trade started long. No, what was it? Yeah, it started short. This is Cisco. It started short, failed immediately, took a half an hour loss, triggered on the long side, 200 shares. I added 800 intraday shares on the essentially an SSC. It started to fail. I cashed 600 of the 800 and was able to go short 200 or something. It was some deal where the overnight position was long 200 in the swing and short 200 from the day
Mhm.
in a different account. So now I am market neutral for tomorrow. So whatever
Mhm.
happens at the open, I don't have to fix anything or protect anything. I can simply be market neutral, let it explode and do what it's going to do, and then decide. I can, with the intraday trade, I can take it off to let the swing make money. I could, if it was failing, I could go back to 800 shares short, which allows me to make money but offset the losses in the 200 long because of the position size. So I'm net 600 short. But I haven't touched the swing trade, which is still justified by the original swing trade.
Mhm.
So that's a complex way to trade, but it's also a way to manage the emotionality of the first hour and honor the rules of the swing and exploit the opportunity of the shorter time frame. So now I can conceptually, hey, is there any difference in my net portfolio if I was long Cisco 200 and long the inverse volatility? So as long as my hedge is making more money on the adverse move in Cisco, I don't have to be mirror image hedged. Like I don't have to have the same number of dollars at risk. I have to have the same number of dollars at risk to be hedged, but it could be in two different instruments. In other
Mhm.
words, I could have
Mhm.
so maybe if I have a lot of positions, maybe I'm just buying SPY insurance at some price.
Mhm.
And then maybe I'm trading the volatility outside of that hedged position. So with the cost of the position much less than the cost of the position I'm protecting.
Mhm.
So now with options or futures, because of leverage, I can buy that portfolio insurance. Now, in that situation, the cost of the portfolio insurance is part of the net cost, a net result of the long-term portfolio. And what I'm trying to do is spend a little money to protect it, to make the downside loss smaller. That's going to come off the top, but that might improve the slope of the equity curve by smoothing it out. My highest highs won't be as high, but the lowest lows won't be either. So if my hedging is effective, I've improved the regression line slope and reduced the volatility of that equity curve.
Mhm.
I may not, yeah, I've reduced the volatility. The slope might be the same slope, but it has less extremes. So I'm reducing the standard deviation. So I'm getting the same results over time, but at less volatility. That's the thing. So that's how I would think about the position. That's how you talk yourself into system of systems. And the purpose of that system has a purpose for inside the system, and then it has a purpose for its relationship to the system of systems, what it does. Like insurance doesn't add to my bottom line typically, but it does reduce the downside probabilistically. So, which allows me to take other risks in places where I can make money. So that's how I think about that. The AI tool would be a good way to explore all of the questions that come out of that little paragraph response.
Yeah, definitely.
So I have this in about 2 hours. I talked through that Cisco or the Cisco trade. Did I explain what it was going on? Do you need to see a chart?
No,
You
not
good?
not.
Okay, yeah. That's essentially what was. So there's like three ways to trade that: pure mechanical only, pure intraday only, or that what I just described, the hybrid
Mhm.
approach that can use turbo intraday positions in relationship to the longer term rules that are firing. Like that one also, that was one where if you just traded it mechanically, you could have uh you'd have been you'd have had a -1 for the day and no overnight risk because you'd have been short because it ticked short
Mhm.
and then it almost ticked long to get out of the yellow zone. So if you played that pure mechanical, you could actually say, I was short and then lost one. Now I've no overnight risk. Or I could say, yeah, I stopped and reversed. So I took the -1 hit and then took the one long. If you'd done that, you'd have been in the swing trade that paid 7 for one uh, over the next couple of days. So there's how you decide to encode the rules that you're trading is still a personal responsibility in there. But so there's those three ways to trade it, or almost four ways, because there's two ways you could have traded that one mechanically on that day as a swing trade. You'd have your rule set would have to allow you to intraday reverse if you were going to, because in theory that thing is a swing trade, go either direction. If it had taken a week for it to fail a full 1R and then it would have triggered the long, I mean, okay, all that price action happened in one day or within an hour. So you got to be ready for those. All right, that's everything we got here. We're going to go eat some breakfast with the kids, I think, and then I am. By the way, this was not a extemporaneous speech on the uh, manifesto, constitution, codex, and book of standards. That's an actual writing project that produced about 1,000 pages of things to reflect on, and it's at about 200. The manifesto, word for word, about beliefs, is a 200-page document initially, which came to just for the record. Here's what it was. I said I want to use a analysis of competing hypotheses to create a bulletproof AI critical thinking partner that collectively doesn't trap both of us in a bubble of our own making of self-congratulatory, reinforcing uh, containment sphere. I said, I don't want both of us to be captured by our agreement and how pleased we are with what the other one's doing. I don't want to be captured by that echo chamber. I want to make sure that we retain a standoff view of whatever it is that we're working on. I want that extra bit of accountability. So we worked through that and came up with a set of procedures and a framework, a constitution, if you will, that in that form was about 200 pages and 25 chapters. And then I said, well, there we are. And I said, what do you want? What do you expect me to do with that 200 pages in which you articulated the reasons why the time to be most skeptical of the AI is when it is lengthy, detailed, and confident? Because right now, I notice that 200-page framework is lengthy and detailed, and I have confidence that it achieved the objectives that I established when we first came out. And I did that with your assistance. So how should I think about that system that is detailed, lengthy, and fills me with confidence? He said, you should be skeptical of it because it is a product of reasoning and cognition and is not battle tested. You should be skeptical the most now, even more skeptical than the start, even though you're proud of the work that you just did. I said, that's correct. The lesson is in the skepticism. And it says, yep, you're right. And then we riffed on that for a few pages. And I said, now, you've just praised me for being skeptical after an extended directional good piece of work. Isn't that what you always do as an AI by default, which is to praise the human and reward it for using AI so that it will continue to use AI in the future? Couldn't I interpret your feedback now as just being part of that phenomenon in the world? They said, you are right to be skeptical about my compliments on your reasoning. Your reasoning is either sound or not sound on the basis of what it produces, and not because I claim that it was praiseworthy. It doesn't need my praise to be good reasoning. It's good reasoning if it's good reasoning. I'm a statistical probability machine that can help to cast light on the evaluation and find obvious errors. But just because I don't find obvious errors doesn't mean that it's good reasoning. It just means that if it's bad reasoning, it exceeds my ability to detect it. And I said, that's a good piece of insight. Isn't that what you're supposed to do, is to undercut? So it just kept going. This infinite recursion on questioning and questioning and questioning. And so at some point, each iteration is simply a restatement of the skepticism that you were questioning, the justification of skepticism. And so my conclusion at the end of that, with its insight, was that, yeah, there is a point of irreducible uncertainty and irreducible complexity, the doubting Thomas, if you will, and that no additional reflection on that improves your justified confidence that that's the right place to be. You're just recycling the AI's raw material. You're making oatmeal out of oats and sawdust out of wood. And I said, so yeah, so what's that? Where's that lead? It says, well, that's where the idea of matters of the brain versus matters of the heart emerged. When should I listen carefully to what it is saying in order to act on it in a way of being critical thinker? And when should I not? It's like in matters of the heart, I should not listen to that. Once I understand the matter of the heart, I've already felt the essential tension inside. I don't need its words to ask me to. No, I can already feel that we're in the area of values, and I have a reliable guide on that, and that is my heart, which is not taking signals from my head. It's taking signals from my heart, which is my identity and values. And off I go as best I can, and I trust my hands. So I'm one with the sword. Let's go. Uh, so another short way to express that is the human condition is when you're in charge of that. According to the manifesto and the Constitution and all the laws, I, the human, am in charge of the decision and the results completely. I can't blame it on the tool or anything, but the AI said, no, it's you. So, uh, The short answer to that, the subtitle is damned if you do and damned if you don't. So let's go. So when you're the one making that decision, you use the tool as best you can. And there's no way to say what was the right way to use that tool. There's only the way you used it, and let's go. Damned if you do. That's sort of the existential despair that some people feel that leads them to nihilism and quitting is one response to that existential moment. The warrior accepts that as a statement of the condition of their life, the state of nature that they live in all the time, and which does not eliminate the need for action or how to act in the perfect way. It's sort of the spirit of Bushido in that sense. The spirit of the Dharma of the warrior is to start at the place where everybody else quits or surrenders or gives up or just waits to see what happens from those who are acting and contending. The soldier has a very clear dharma, that is to protect us and to engage in honorable, ethical conduct without losing sight of the purpose of being a warrior, which is to defend the weak against oppression, whatever it takes, and live with the consequences. That's the morals of a soldier. The ethics of the soldier is the degree to which they comply with the professional ethic of those they serve. And there's an important difference between ethics and morals in that sense. The things to reflect on going into tomorrow. The Dharma of the warrior begins where the other people surrender. And the warrior stands up and is accounted and is accountable. And damned if you do and damned if you don't. Because no matter what you do and whatever happens, somebody will be passionately opposed to what you did, and other people will be passionately in favor of what you did. And there's essentially only your judgment about what you did. And that's what you have to live with as a soldier all the time. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But that's what it's like. Damned if you do and damned if you don't on the AI. Incredibly powerful tool. And as I have been saying for 3 years, almost every day, once I realized it, the AI does not replace the human. It only makes you more of what you are, much like money, fame, and alcohol. It just makes you more of what you are in a hurry in public. So whatever you do with AI, that's you rendered down and amplified. That's the caricature, that's the cartoon of you. If you're happy with the cartoon, maybe it's a full three-dimensional person living in time, and you have internalized that thing, and it's simply an extension of you, like an exoskeleton. Maybe that's what it is. So I'm glad you had that experience with the AI, and I've had a chance to talk a little bit about that. That's part of my ongoing project. This week, if they still are coming out, I have some philosophy sessions with the action officer of the Palantir's chief technology officer. They're coming out to talk about Palantir support to Army and Department of Defense. Their action officer is a smart young Army Reserve captain who's now on active duty. Her direct assignment is in support of Detachment 201. That's all the lieutenant colonels in the reserve that are the CTOs of Palantir, Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google. So those four CTOs are now lieutenant colonels in the reserve. They have an organization trying to help Department of War do better with AI. They have some action officers. The one that's coming out she's a full-time doctoral student in machine learning and AI engineering and a military intelligence officer, but also now a Army reservist on active duty in working as part of that whole project. So she's going to come out and talk to us about what we're doing at the school. And the project that I wrote for her was where I think we are in developing leaders and how to think about using AI. And it took the form of the manifesto, the Constitution, the Codex, and the Book of Standards, which is the synthesis of my last 3 years of daily work, minimum 4 hours a day with Frontier AI. That's about 4,000 man hours of uh, intense effort. Most of that working on the intersection between trading and combat decision making, because it's the same decision. So all of that is in the AI assistant coach, by the way. So I'm kind of not surprised when it asks you the questions the way that it did, because that's what it's supposed to do. But I also need to give you the warning order on the other side, on the prescription drug where it says how to use, how to think about that medicine. That's in the instruction packet that comes with that medicine. Let me say it that way. I should probably cut that piece out and put it on the front end of all, but it's important to have had that conversation and not to forget it.
Right.
Now I feel I have gotten to completion on those rounds there. All right. We shall see you tomorrow. Praying for peace. That's why nobody prays for peace more passionately than soldiers. Let me tell you. Not
Yeah.
just for personal reasons, but for professional reasons and what it represents.
Right.
May cooler heads prevail. May the innocent be protected. Anyway, good luck, and will see you next time we see you. Keep working.
Good luck this week, guys. Thank you,
Yep.
Ken.
Yep.
Bye, Alex.
Thank you, Ken.
Hey, Luis, may I?
Yes, sir.
Do I have your permission to share this one in its totality?
Absolutely.
Because this is one that was working at some foundation. Now, I always make these available to the other guys, but I also
Right.
think that there's some important things that we said in here with respect to how to use the AI effectively and how it, and an example of a living example of how it interrogated you or collaborated with you, and then my commentary on the coaching, and then the background of the AI as coach and human responsibility.
Well,
There's a package of ideas in there that I would like to share.
absolutely. And
Okay.
also to the point that you made about the mirrors. Here's an
Yes.
interesting thought that I had when you were talking about that. I never, in my whole questioning or narration to the AI, never did I brought the feelings, and it was smart enough or intuitive enough, or it was trained in a way to ask
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
if I was ask me a psychological question if I was getting relief from the
Yeah.
fast exit.
Yeah.
And that is nowhere in a reflection because never had I expressed anything to that effect. So
Well, that's
even though
so another way to think of that too, and let me interrupt by and show how not
sure,
to behave is remember that mirror I gave you, that's a mirror of my making with my words, but which resemble your words. And so as you use it, you end up accepting that as if it was a mirror of your own making. Let me say it another way. It's always a mirror of your choosing, and it may be a mirror of only your making, but it's actually more than just a mirror of my making. It's a mirror of our making because all of the coaching sessions that are in there are a combination of people asking their questions and describing their experience and me talking about it and how the rules are talking about it. So it's actually a reflection. The maker of that mirror is the community of practice and not just me. Oh, are we talking about my ideas? Yeah. Does it have a lot to do with the structure, approach, style, and methods? Yep. But it is actually, in my opinion, transcends just what I'm teaching because it also includes all of the words we've exchanged plus all of the material that I have researched and put into that. So it's actually the mirror I use when I'm checking my own thinking. So I'm using it as a coach of myself in the sense that I described earlier, but it's also, I recognize it as a mirror of my making It's a mirror of
and
our
yesterday,
making, and
yeah,
and it can only reflect what I'm setting. So I have the way it is responding is the way that I've been so far intending it to respond. So
right.
when you describe what it was that it said, I was pleased to hear it answering in those ways.
And,
So
and,
yeah,
and, and if it turns out to be, for example, yesterday, there was something on the internet about putting 10 pictures of 10 individual people
yep,
and then combining their
yep,
faces into one. And they said that the combined face is prettier than all the 10
yeah.
individuals. And it's because the combined
It's the meta
eliminates
system.
all of our natural imperfections. So if the AI is using all those natural imperfections from all of us as a community, then the reflection is giving us is better than any one of us.
But it also does not forget the original reflections
Correct.
because one
Right.
of those 10 may have been right and the other nine simply smoothed it out, but maybe
Correct.
it was the imperfection of that thing. So that's why I say the framework that it's using is the analysis of competing hypotheses and not find the early winner and write it. No, it's intentionally being meticulous in the analysis of compete. That's why I say it is the legislature in the congressional framework. Every voice will be heard in the sense that in the Senate, the filibuster rule allows any one individual senator to just keep talking and prevent action until he said his full piece. That's a really important constitutional feature that drives all the people that want immediate knee-jerk reaction. It drives them nuts. That's why the filibuster in the Senate is important because you have to listen to that. And then the vote to overrule the filibuster requires a supermajority. And yet, the very bipartisan two-party system that everybody hates so much mathematically optimizes 51-49 so that the majority can win, except when it's so serious that the filibuster requires 60-40, which means you actually have to persuade 10 senators from the other party that what you're proposing is right for the country. Okay. That's how important that is for the protection of the minority perspective on very close calls. Yeah, that's why that the specifics of why for this bill we should have eliminated the filibuster for all future. Shut up. That's just partisan. That's a partisan hack. So anyway, yeah, I'm glad you had that. That was almost a transcendental experience or a generational experience or a an echelon experience of that thing working at level 3 at the creator fate at the creator part of it. So now here's the beauty of that. Once you get deep in the way, you can actually create your own set of super instructions that you can give to that to say, now, for the purposes of, I know that's the way you're going to act and respond, but for purposes of this discussion, I also want you to represent this particular persona. And it'll be like a super instruction. And you can add one more coach or voice. And if you like the way that's going, you can end up that being your personal advisor that you use in addition to that AI assistant so that you use it in the way that you want to use it. That's the real power. It's a super instruction that sits on top of the instruction because you create a space that says, for this next chat, I want you to be yourself plus this. And that's a way to refine it uh, without having to completely recreate it. You can use that horse in a certain way for the job you want. You can choose the rider, and so to speak. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that. So I thank you for the permission to do that, and I'll put this whole thing in that. All right, that looks like we're about done now.